Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor and Carrie Brown coming at you with another Smarter Science of Slim podcast. And this week, Carrie, last week we talked about eccentric training. We talked about how we have to exercise less in order to clear our hormonal clog, because to clear our hormonal clog, we have to work more muscle fibers. We have to work our more metabolically beneficial muscle fibers. And to do so, we use up our energy quickly, which means we have to exercise less and we have to exercise less frequently. But, it's not some too good to be true gimmick, because eccentric training is quite challenging and leaves us quite sore. And that's part of the reason we can't do a lot of it and we can't do it frequently. And I promise that this week we're going to talk a bit more specifically about how to actually do it.
All right.
So we're going to talk about how to exercise eccentrically. And folks, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. Trying to describe how to do exercises purely using the spoken word is a bit challenging, but we're going to do the best that we can here. And there are some videos on the smarterscienceofslim.com that make this a bit easier. But the good news is that these aren't new exercises. It's just a way to take existing exercises and do them differently, to do them smarter. So a general rule of thumb, or so general steps. So remember, eccentric means extending. We're talking about slowly lowering weight. And the general way we do this, and there's ways to do this at home, there's ways to do it at the gym. We're going to talk about the at-home stuff today, because I'd also like to maybe have some time to talk about how we can do cardiovascular exercise smarter as well, but that might have to wait till next week. We'll see how this goes. So how do we exercise eccentrically generally? So first thing we want to do is we want to get warmed up. And then we want to pick a resistance. And again, we'll talk about how to do this with specific exercise, but these are like the 5 rules. So get warmed up. Step 2 is to pick a resistance that we can't lift with one arm or one leg, but we can easily lift with both arms or both legs. So for our example, let's say 20 pounds. So we can't lift 20 pounds with one arm, but we can lift it with both arms. Okay, that's sort of the weight we pick to begin with. Then we lift the resistance with both arms or both legs. And when we do this, each arm and each leg will be lifting half of the resistance. Makes sense? So 10 pounds each. Then we're gonna slowly lower all of the resistance with one arm or one leg for 10 seconds. So now each arm or each leg lowers all the weight, or 20 pounds. And you might, again, be asking yourself, well, if I couldn't lift 20 pounds with one arm, how am I going to lower 20 pounds with one arm? But remember, we're stronger eccentrically than we are concentrically, so we can always lower more weight than we can lift. So our strategy is to find a weight we can't lift with one arm, we can lift with 2 arms, but then we can lower with one arm or one leg.
And to give, so all the ladies out there, just to give you an idea of where I started was with a 20-pound weight. Mm-hmm. I found that was just too much for me to lift with one arm. So I lift it with 2, but I can lower that over 10 seconds with one arm. So just to, when you're thinking about going to get a dumbbell or whatever, yep, that I would say that's probably a good kind of place to start.
Absolutely. And the good news is when we get to the specific, like the core, most important exercise we're going to talk about is body weight squats. And you're going to use your body as your weight. And you can dynamically adjust your own body weight by how much you use your other leg or arm. But we'll talk about that in a second. So once you do that and you slowly lower the weight for 10 seconds, you're going to want to repeat that for 6 times. So you're basically your muscle is going to be slowly extending for a total of 60 seconds. So you're going to do 6 10-second repetitions. And if you have the correct amount of weight, which you're going to want to try this a few times just to get the hang of it, but once you do have the correct amount of resistance, like at that 6th repetition on second 10, you should be done, like no more. Like that muscle is just toast, totally spent. But 2 things to keep in mind before we jump into the actual exercises, because these will help to influence the exercises we pick. 2 rules. 1, we should only exercise eccentrically in a way that enables us to lift a shared source of resistance. Or in other words, we can work both of our arms together. Let me give you an example of what this means. if we were to pick like a gallon jug of milk in our left hand and pick up another one in our right hand and lift them both above our head and then lower one of them, like that's not, a gallon of milk weighs about 8 pounds. If we have one in each hand, each arm is independently working 8 pounds. However, if we were to take one dumbbell and hold it in both hands and using both hands like you're sort of praying out in front of you, and then lift it above your head with both hands and then lower it with one, well, you're lowering more resistance than you raise. So you have to lift with both arms, a shared source of resistance, and then lower with one arm or one leg, the full resistance.
Got it.
The other thing is we only want to do this with exercises that require little, if any, balance. Like here's what not to do. Pick up a giant flat screen TV with two hands and then let go with one hand. Like do not do that, right? This no balance. This isn't about like getting on one of these suspension machines or balancing on a ball. Like those are all fantastic ways to develop balance, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to clear our hormonal clog, work our muscle fibers. The way we do that is to minimize having to worry about balance, because if we're thinking about balancing ourselves, we're not going to be able to work as hard as we need to. Makes sense. So just let's jump straight into how to do this at home, Carrie, but as a general, just a really quick illustration, because people might be saying like, what? How do I actually do this? So imagine a push-up. So again, like I said, no new exercises, just a new way to do exercise. So when we traditionally think of a push-up, right, you start in this, you kind of lay on the floor and you push yourself up with two arms. Now that's too challenging for a lot of us, but what we'll find is that if we actually start in the top portion of a push-up position, maybe we rest our knees on the ground, we will be able to slowly lower ourselves to the ground for 10 seconds. We may not be able to push ourselves up, but we can slowly lower ourselves down. In essence, we can do an eccentric push-up, whereas we couldn't do a full concentric and eccentric push-up. And that's what we want to do, just the eccentric portion.
Although I have to say that when you're starting out, especially if you're a girl, you may not be able to lower yourself completely down.
Yep, absolutely.
Because I can't. I still can't. I kind of collapse halfway. But, you know, you get there, right?
Yep.
You get better as you do it more.
Well, and the thing that's cool, though, is even though the eccentric is certainly going to be a challenge, at least we can start to get stronger, whereas like a full-on push-up, that might just be, I mean, like that's just no dice, like none. So.
Jonathan roared when he saw me try to do a push-up.
Well, so to be in my defense, this is like man bashing here. In my defense, if you saw Carrie, I mean, she has been doing the Smarter Science of Slim very, very well. I mean, the woman is in great shape. She looks fantastic. And I had just assumed that given her appearance, that, you know, Carrie's an Olympic-style athlete, basically.
Oh,
so the laughter was not so much. I was more of I was in shock. So in my defense, there you go. Have I sufficiently placated you?
Well, but the point is, I no longer care that I can't do a push-up because push-ups are stupid anyway.
There you go. Okay, well, speaking of stupid things, so we're actually going to have Carrie describe to you how to do. So we're going to do 4 basic movements in our eccentric exercise routine. And again, folks, I apologize. It's very difficult to describe how to do exercises without showing them to you. So if at all possible, we're going to talk about 4 exercises and how to do them at home. The first is a squat. The second is a pull-up. We're not actually going to do a pull-up. We're going to do kind of just the lowering portion while helping ourselves so we don't have to use our full body weight. Then we're going to do a push-up or a push-up derivative, and we're going to do a shoulder press. Now, I named those exercises, okay, squat, pull-up, push-up, shoulder press, because if you go on the internet and you type those into a search engine, like you're going to get all kinds of videos and photos and instructional things. So please, if this doesn't make complete sense, our intentions are good, and just use the internet as a resource and really focus not so much here on learning how to do the movement, rely on videos and how-to information. I mean, we've got videos up on our site that you can check out. Here, focus on how to do them eccentrically, and then use other resources on how to do the movement in general if you're not familiar with it. But the first exercise is a squat, and the good news is this is basically just sitting down. Like if you've ever sat down, which we all have, you basically know how to do this movement. So Carrie, why don't you just describe to us how you do an eccentric squat. No, just describe how you do it personally.
How I do it?
How you do it.
Okay.
So just take us through it.
You need to find a solid, immovable object like a railing, or sometimes I've used the counter in my bathroom.
Okay.
Or a doorknob with the door that's shut.
Okay.
So it can't move.
Yep,
So something solid
that you're going to hold on
that
to?
you're going to hold on to.
Okay.
And so you want the whatever the piece you're going to hold to be at about elbow height.
Okay, so
from
like
the
railing,
ground.
countertop, doorknob, some good
Doorknob, that
examples.
kind of height.
Okay.
Then so you're going to stand holding on to this object
Yep.
with both hands and about not a full arm length away from it, and you're going to lean back until your arms are fully extended. And then
Maybe put a chair behind you or something like that.
Oh, there, that's right. I actually don't need the chair, but when you start, have the chair, because if you do go backwards, then you know the chair's going to save you. So you're leaning back, hanging onto your object. You're then going to transfer all your weight onto one heel of one leg.
Well, and can I interject here real quick, Carrie? So Carrie is all of your weight. This is, again, Carrie's been doing these for a while. She's in great shape. Step one, exactly what Carrie said. Just sit down at that point, just to understand what we're going to do here. So just sit down normally and then stand up. And then when you sit down a second time, sit down like over the course of 30 seconds or 20 seconds. Just literally sit down incredibly slowly. And then the third time you do it, I want you to sit down, and then right before your rear end touches the chair, just hold that. Just hold it for kind of as long as you can. Once you feel comfortable with that, then we're going to actually jump into the eccentrics, which, Carrie, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so you're hanging on to this thing, you're arm's length leaning back from your solid object. You've transferred all of your weight onto one heel. Your other leg is off the ground. And then over the course of 10 seconds, you're going to slowly lower yourself down as far as you can go. When you get better at this, when you get stronger, you go past the chair. But for right now, it should take you 10 seconds to go from standing to just above the chair.
Yeah, so basically your quad or the upper portion of your leg should be parallel with the ground. And again, like I said, Carrie's actually quite advanced at this now, so she's able to lift her other leg completely off the ground. So again, getting back to the eccentric principles we talked about last podcast, and even in this podcast too, right? Carrie is now lowering all of her body weight using one leg, and then she stands back up using two legs. She couldn't stand up using one leg, but she is sitting down using one leg. Now, as we get as strong as Carrie currently is, we might need to use our other leg a little bit, and that's okay. So just like Carrie said, right, you're holding on to something, maybe just shift 70% of your weight onto your right leg and start to squat down. And if you feel like that's too easy, then shift a little bit more weight onto it. If you feel that's too hard, shift some more weight back onto your left leg. The beautiful thing about the techniques we're going to cover here is you essentially can dynamically adjust the resistance as you're doing it. That's why we say 10 seconds, because, for example, if you try to do this and you just plop right down, you're not helping yourself enough. Similarly, if you're squatting down and it's been 30 seconds and you're like, this is easy, well, then you need to use your other leg less. So you're spotting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. So that's how to do an eccentric squat. So like Carrie said, you squat down basically with one leg, you stand up with two, you squat down with one, you repeat that 6 times.
6 times.
So the next one is the pull-up, which is actually not a pull-up at all. It's kind of a let down.
Let down.
So how do you generally do those, Carrie?
So I have a pull-up, what is called a pull-up bar, which is something you attach to your door frame.
Yep. And you can buy these on Amazon for $20, $30 bucks.
$20, $30. I got mine at a sports store. So you attach it to your door frame, and then you stand on a chair so that or something so that your chin is kind of level with the bar.
Yeah, you're basically at the top, like you've done the pull-up.
You haven't done the pull-up, but that's the position that you can imagine that you've just done a pull-up, and that's the starting position. And but you're still standing on the chair. So then you need to bend your legs so your feet are off the chair, and then over 10 seconds you need to gradually lower yourself over 10 seconds, and then you can put your feet back on the chair.
And you stand back up. So again, as Carrie illustrated here, remember these principles are consistent. So many of us may not be able to do a pull up, and that's fine, but we are stronger eccentrically, so we can do a let down. And in fact, again, Carrie's been doing these for a while, so she's quite strong. So she's able to lift her legs off the chair and let her full body weight down. But as we're getting stronger, the beauty of the chair is, okay, you stand on the chair and then you hold your arms in the top position, and your arms are just sitting there, like they're not using any resistance. But what you can start to do is you can kind of lift your legs off the chair. So, your arms are now holding 10% of your body weight and then 20%. And you'll know, I love with the pull-ups or let-downs, what you can just try to do is really just try not to go down. And what you'll find is that when you lift your legs far enough off the chair, the resistance will be heavy enough that despite the fact that you're trying not to lower down, gravity will take care of that for you. And that applies to any of these exercises, like with the squats. You really shouldn't need to think about lowering yourself. You should actually try to not lower yourself. Like your goal should be like, dang it, I'm not gonna go down. But you should be using so much resistance that despite your best effort not to move, you still lower down. That's actually a key. Most people progress through sort of 3 phases of eccentric training. The first phase is they're like consciously like, I'm going to lower myself for 10 seconds. Okay, cool. Then they add some resistance and they're like, wow, I can still lower myself for 10 seconds. Interesting. I'm stronger than I thought I was. And then they get to stage 3, which is the last stage, which is they have enough resistance where they try not to lower themselves. Like, I'm not going to lower myself, but gravity forces them all the way down. Is that fair?
Yep.
All right. So then the third exercise. And we did the eccentric squats. That's going to work our legs, like our quadricep, our hamstring, our butts. And that's really important. Like if you do only one exercise, do that one, because the vast majority of muscle in your body is in your legs. It's the most important muscle group to work. We'll talk about why in more podcasts or in a future podcast. That pull up or let down is going to work our back muscles as well as our arm muscles, which is, again, huge muscle group. Carrie's going to cover how to do an eccentric push-up, which is going to work our arms as well as our chest. So also very important.
And this is the one that caused me the most grief. But what made me excited to do it was the first time I saw Jonathan do it. He was actually at a presentation and he did it on a table so that people could see him. And the best bit about it was that he lowered himself down, and then he didn't push himself back up. He hopped off the table, got back up, top position, start again. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yep.
So this is essentially a reverse push-up. So you actually start with your arms extended in a push-up position with your arms extended, so you're at the top. It's as if you've just pushed yourself up. Now, because I'm a girl and because I have arms like wet spaghetti, I'm using my knees. I'm not on my toes. Jonathan does them where he's on his toes and he lowers down. It's all goodness. I can't do that yet. So I'm using my knees. So my knees are on the floor. My back is straight. My arms are fully extended as if I've just done a push-up. And then over 10 seconds, I lower myself towards the ground. And I say towards the ground because I cannot get all the way to the ground without my arms absolutely giving out. Yep. My arms are not that strong yet. Jonathan does it. He lowers himself until his nose is a centimeter above the table, and then he holds it there. Mm-hmm. I'm not at that point where I can do that yet. So I lower myself as far as I can towards the ground, and then I hold it for 10 seconds, and then I collapse.
And then you sort of get back in that top position, however,
then I kind of roll over, back up on my knees, start at the top position again, and lower myself, and then hold it until my arms collapse.
And it's excellent that Carrie brought that up, because there's a couple of ways to, as we get stronger, there's ways that we can make these exercises more challenging. An example that Carrie gave here is, so for me, for any exercise, there's a portion of the movement that is the most difficult, and it's usually when the muscle is contracted the most. So like when we squat down, it's sort of that bottom portion of the movement. So like right when our legs are at parallel or quadriceps are at parallel with the ground, that's much harder to hold than, for example, if we just bend our knees 2 inches. Like you can just try this right now. Stand up, bend your knees a little bit and hold it. It's easy. Bend your knees a lot and hold it. It's much harder. Same thing with a pull-up. So like when you're at the very top of a pull-up, that's much harder than when you're closer to the bottom. And with a push-up, right before you're at the bottom of the push-up is the hardest part. So if you are a little bit more advanced, what you can do is, instead of lowering for 10 seconds, what you can do is just at a control speed, get to that most difficult point and hold that point for 10 seconds. So like with the push-up, what I do is I've got my feet on the ground, not my knees. I lower myself down to the very bottom, but while I'm still bearing all of my body weight, again, my nose is basically touching the ground, and I hold that bottom position for 10 seconds.
And I got to tell you, listeners, that when I first saw Jonathan do this, it was amazing, because you can imagine, I mean, you've seen pictures of him, and you can kind of imagine what he looks like. And he's been doing this for a long time, and before that, he was a trainer. So, you know, he's a strong dude. Mm-hmm. And when I first saw him do the first one, not the sixth one, the first one, he broke out in a sweat. That's how hard it is to do this. So don't feel, especially girls, don't feel pathetic if you can only lower yourself 3 inches and then you feel like your arms are going to snap. It will get better, but that's the kind of intensity that you need to be putting your muscles through. And, you know, even after you've done 6 repetitions, it's, you know, it's a couple of minutes. Not even that. So it's a massive amount of pain in a very short time, but it's very, very arduous.
Absolutely. And a key thing, Carrie mentioned the word pain there, which is good to bring up because it is going to hurt. But one thing we need to be very conscious of is the 2 different kinds of hurt. Like hopefully we've all been, you know, muscular soreness and desirable pain versus like if you feel like a sharp stabbing sensation, like that's not good. That probably means you're doing the exercise incorrectly. Like your arm is in the wrong position, your leg is in the wrong position. You may want to have, you know, a trainer show you how to do the exercise and then you perform it eccentrically yourself. But it is, you know, think of it like an immunization where it's painful, but for a very short period of time and very safe so that we have a much better experience in the future. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, again, we have videos online, and also please feel free to use the Smarter Science of Slim support group up on the website, because again, you know, trying to explain these here, I always just feel bad because, you know, I wish I could just come and show you how to do this, but it's not feasible for me to do that. So reach out, let us know how we can help you. And the last exercise is a shoulder press.
This is my favorite one.
This is Carrie's favorite.
Because it only involves a 20-pound weight and not the entire weight of my body.
Yeah. And there is a way, I will wait till Carrie's done, to talk about how you can do this with your entire body weight, but that's much more advanced.
And the other reason I love this is because once I added this one, it made my waist smaller, which is weird but true. It also made my back fat disappear, which was just the best thing ever.
And part of it too, and I don't, this is probably not what happened, but what you'll find is when we actually build up our muscles, again, we're not going to get bulky muscles, but we are going to get definition. But if, for example, back in the day, I don't know if they still do this, but there used to be shoulder pads in clothing. When you start doing smarter resistance training, you won't need those anymore because your back muscles and your arm muscles and your shoulder muscles and your leg muscles, they're going to fill out and your waist will look smaller because relative to everything else, it is. And in fact, you know, you can see this oftentimes most obviously on men. You know, they've got, you know, the broad shoulders and the slim waist, whereas their waist may not actually be that slim, but relative to their shoulders, it is. So Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. So
you will need, and I tried with various devices, but really the dumbbell was the way to go. I mean, because it's 20 pounds is not light. So to find something in your home that weighs 20 pounds that you can also hold and easy to do was just, I gave up with that in the end. And I finally went to the sports store and so I started with a 20-pound dumbbell. So you're standing there, legs shoulder width apart, and you're going to hold the dumbbell with one of the bells at the top. So you're not holding it sideways, you're holding it lengthways with both hands, and you're going to lift it with both hands until it's directly above your head.
And think of this kind of as a press. Don't have your arms extended out and like arc them up. Think of it as you're pressing it above your head.
Right, so it's quite close to your body.
Yeah.
So now you're standing there with your both hands holding this dumbbell above your head. Then you're going to let go with one hand, and with the other hand you're going to slowly, over 10 seconds, you're going to lower it down to your side, keeping everything perpendicular. So you're coming down sideways. So your elbow is moving towards your hip,
yes.
But you're keeping your elbow bent.
This is one, really look this one up online, because this is one that's very important, that you have your arm like at the correct angles, because we really don't want you to mess up your rotator cuff. So, the key thing Carrie said there that was spot on though, right? The thing we're talking about is you lift with two arms, you lower with one very, very slowly, and you can even spot yourself with the other arm. But as Carrie kind of illustrated, your arms got to be at the correct angles. Otherwise, you might screw up your rotator cuff, and shoulder injuries are no fun. So please do dig into that.
I actually do this standing sideways over my bed. So if I ever get to that point where my arm collapses and I have to drop the thing, it's just dropping on my bed. So that's how I do it.
No, I really, really like that. And for don't do this. This is an incredibly advanced movement. This is what I do. When I do exercise at a gym, because I need a bit more resistance, and that's what you'll find is as you get more advanced, there are ways to add resistance at home. Some examples are resistance bands, and these are super economical. I have a brand. I don't sell products, but there's a brand that I use that I link to on my website on Amazon. You can get them on Amazon. These resistance bands are like 25 pounds, 35 pounds, 45 pounds. There's a lot of resistance, and that's a brilliant way to add resistance. You can also buy a weight vest. And again, these things are all like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. We're not talking about like $100 pieces of equipment. You strap the weight vest on. That's helpful for the squats. It's helpful for the pull-ups. It's helpful for the push-ups. Or you could just buy like a dumbbell, like Carrie said. But back to the shoulder exercise, for individuals who are extremely advanced, if you've ever watched the movie Dragon with Bruce Lee in it, he does handstand push-ups, which is basically like, if you think a push-up is hard, imagine doing a handstand and then pushing yourself up and down. So
is that even possible?
It is.
Wow.
I was gonna do one right now.
No, don't do that. No.
But well, the thing it's actually very difficult to push yourself up. But again, you can lower yourself down. It's also very dangerous because if you screw it up, you break your neck. So don't do that. But it just, again, illustrates the point here. Again, squat, not a new movement. We're not here inventing that. Pull up, not a new movement. Push up, definitely not a new movement. Shoulder press, these are all established exercises. All we're doing is we're talking about ways we can make it so that we can lower more weight than we lift. So,
and I think we're just reversing them all.
Oh yeah,
we're
exactly.
Putting the emphasis is on the lowering, not the raising.
But I think the thing that is I guess helpful or creative is the ability to do that by yourself. Because most people, when they think of eccentric training, they think they have to have a spotter, right? Because it's like, imagine you're doing a bench press and you lower the weight down. Well, how the heck do you pick it back up? But what we're illustrating here is there are ways to do that by using your other limb to spot yourself. The reason I call this out is, again, these are not new movements. Any qualified personal trainer can teach you how to do any exercise. But what you'll want to do then, and it'll save you some money, is if you like your trainer and you want to work with them, that's fine. But you can go see them once. In fact, almost any gym will give you one free personal trainer consultation. So what you can do, little trick, leverage that personal trainer consultation, have them show you how to do these exercises, then just focus on lowering the weight like we've done here. So have the trainers show you the basic exercises and then apply these principles on top of them, and then you can do those exercises even smarter.
Awesome.
I love it. So next week, folks, so again, there's videos online, there's all kinds of stuff to complement this. Starting next week, we're going to talk about how we can, we just talked about how to do resistance training smarter, work more muscle fibers, get more results in less time. We're going to talk about how to take cardiovascular exercise, or quote unquote cardiovascular exercise, because we'll see it's really not that different from resistance training, and how to make that smarter. These are things like on an elliptical machine or on a stationary bike. So
those are a doozy, I can tell you.
So have a great week. Remember to eat more and exercise less, but do it smarter. Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.